Hello, this is Jay Hoskins with Hoskins Woodcraft. Today I want to share with you my technique for marking pin boards from the tailboards when you're making a dovetail joint. Now I've used Rob Cosman's process for making dovetails for quite some time now, and I find it to be the best process that's out there. He has a lot of very good techniques for making dovetails and a couple of very brilliant ideas. So those of you who don't know that process, you should go ahead and check it out and pick up a couple of videos where he shows off the entire process end to end, because I won't be going through that here. I'm going to assume you know the process, and I'm only going to cover one portion of it that I think I've improved significantly. If you do know about the process, you know that his most brilliant idea is doing tails first and then offsetting the tailboard and the pin board while you're transferring the tails to the pins. And during that process, what that does is make a saw kerf in the tailboard that perfectly aligns the saw and gives you a perfect joint every time. Now, what I've always discovered is that whenever I've made my dovetails and I find an error in the dovetail or it doesn't come out quite right, I've usually traced that mistake back to that process of marking the tails on the pin board. And the problems that I always found with it was that first you have to set your marking gauge to the width of your saw kerf. And that's one way you can introduce errors into the system, is that you'd make a mistake there while you're setting it, and then another problem is you have to do it every time unless you keep a dedicated marking gauge around just for your saw kerf. The other problem was the process of aligning it and setting it up on. He typically will use a hand plane and set the tailboard perfectly to that height and so on, and that's a little bit finicky too. And actually holding it down and doing the marking all at the same time and making sure that it doesn't move was always problematic for me. And like I said, the least little slip will cause an error in your dovetail. So I thought about that for a while, and I knew about a couple other techniques, but I'm going to take what's called an alignment board and combine that technique with the offsetting technique. And we're going to use a shim with the alignment board to do the offset, and what you end up with is a process that's perfectly repeatable. You can take it down mid mark and put it back together, and so on and so forth. Now I'm going to show it to you right here, and I'll show you the alignment board that I'm using and some suggestions on how to make it. I won't actually go into the making of it. But before we get going on showing you, I'll show you what I have here. I do have Rob Cosman's dovetail saw. It's fantastic. I wholeheartedly recommend it. I'm using his marking gauge as well. So go to his site and you can find those things, and they're very helpful, and they work fantastic for this process. But I've prepared what would be a typical drawer. And this is a small one. The jig will work on any size, but I've been making these small drawers for a couple of projects at the moment. And so I've got a front out of oak and two sides out of pine. And the tails have already been cut. And we've already put the little rabbet in the back side of the sides. And that's for registration against the pin board when you're doing the marking. So I've already done that. And so these pieces are set up and ready to do the pin board marking. So we also know where our bottom is. We register all our surfaces off the bottom, and we've got this is the top right corner here. And so our front, we've got marked for the bottom. And so we know where our registration surfaces are on all of these parts, and we won't get confused when we put them together. So that's another thing that can be a problem when you're making dovetails. Make sure you keep all these parts straight. So let me get a different camera position so you can see a little more clearly what I'm going to do, and we'll get started. All right, here's my dovetail alignment board. As you can see, it is just a dovetail, two pieces of dovetailed oak with a fence along one side. And you want to carefully make this so that it's perfectly square and straight and aligned in every direction here, and that your fence is perfectly aligned. There are a lot of videos on how to make these and so on and so forth. The shim I'm using for the offset is a ruler. This is the same ruler that many people use for the Charlesworth ruler trick with their planes. It just happens to be the exact same dimension as the saw curve, and it's perfect for what I need. Now, if you're using a different saw than Rob's, you might have to do some searching to get a perfect shim. One potential solution is just to get a set of the really long feeler gauges and take the right one out of there and use that instead. You'll want to have it to be steel though, because what I've done in the fence here is I put some magnets in there so that the ruler will fit there and stay there while we're doing things, while I'm moving it around, and I don't lose it, and I don't need an extra hand to hold it. So I also usually position it up a little higher on a block of some sort. This is a 1.5-inch piece of maple that I've got to put into the vise. And so all I do is throw it into the vise here, and I grab my pin board and get the glasses for the old guy eyes out. And so we're going to always reference off of our reference surfaces. So here's the bottom of the pin board. And so I'm going to make sure that that goes against the fence. I also need, since I'm doing fairly small pieces here, my fence is a little taller than that, so I need a block to help the vise clamp that. If you're using larger pieces like 3/4 inch or something like that, then you don't need that. It's a little bit easier, but this works quite well. And so we'll put the pin board in, and what you want to do is leave this surface up just a little bit, approximately the same amount as the rabbet in the registration on the back sides of your tail boards, and then just clamp it down. So now it's a simple matter of finding which piece that goes on that side of the pin board, and you know that because of the surface that you've marked here. And you put that against the fence, slide it into the pin board, and it registers perfectly and is extremely easy to hold down and keep still while you're doing the marking. So this is fully repeatable, very easy to put in. It's fast, and so on. I also put a little cheater mark on the fence here, so I know which side of the tails I'm marking at any given point in time. So in this case, I'm offset, the shim is on the top, and so I'm offset left, and so I'm going to mark on the right side of the tails. So here we go. Just do your marks. That one. All right, so there's half of that side done. This is oak, so they're hard to see, but they're very clear and deep. Actually, this marking gauge works quite well for this process. So now we do the other half of the equation here. You move your shim down to the pinboard side of the fence. You know, make sure that this is low enough that it doesn't interfere with the tailboard when you're registering it. So get it below the surface of the alignment board, and then put your pinboard back in, and you're ready to mark the other ones. And again, the cheater board says now that we're offset right, we're going to mark to the left of the pins. Now when I was trying to do this while balanced on a plane and balanced on that little bit of surface, it would never work and it would slip, and you had to use a lot of concentration and effort to hold it in place, and actually the knife itself, when you were trying to put it in the slots, would move it around. So that's one side of our pin board. Now we can do the other, and all you do is you flip your alignment board over to the other side so you can register against the your registration surfaces. Your ruler automatically ends up on top. Then we move to the other side of the pin board, throw it in, clamp it, and then you get your other side. Register it in place, again using your cheat sheet. This is up here, so we're offset to the right, so we want to be on the left. And then we do the other part. Offset left, mark right. And again, very fast, very repeatable. And now we have a fully marked board. And again, sorry for it being oak because they're hard to see. But these kerfs are perfect for getting started. So there you have it. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I'll provide a couple links in the description to give you a link to Rob's full process. Again, I wholeheartedly recommend it. Many of the things I've learned from him, and he's a fantastic woodworker and teacher. You can also visit the Hoskins Woodcraft site and look at some of the pieces I've done. Some of them are available for sale. Just contact me if you see anything you like, and they're available for commission as well. Thank you, and have a great day.